Okay, listen up here, guys. So we'll start your unit exam review here. What we'll do is we'll kind of go through the main topics in chronological order. Okay, that's the order we went over them in. Okay, starting in late January, early February there, and we'll move up to what we've most recently done. And what I'll do each time we talk about a topic is I'll kind of tell you, here are some things you should probably look for when you're studying that topic. Here's where or how it will be tested. Okay, so whether it's a multiple choice item, a written response item, whether it's going to be in both parts of the test. Okay, I'll sometimes give you the context in which it's going to be talked about. Okay, things like that. Those are all things obviously you're going to want to write down. I'll give you an idea of what things are weighted more heavily than others. Okay. And then I'll give you some details on the test itself, number of questions, topics, okay, things like that. And yeah, so that's what we'll be looking at. But before we get to that, first I want to talk about some little things that people really overlook in terms of their importance for being ready for a unit exam of any kind. Okay? For example, on Sunday night, what's the most important thing you can do? Okay, so most important thing on Sunday night is sleep. Okay, if you have waited until Sunday night to study for this test, you're already screwed. So you might as well get a good night's sleep, because there's no way you'll effectively prepare for this test in a 2-hour cram session on Sunday night. Okay, it's just not going to happen. So what you should be doing is doing a little bit each day. Hopefully you've already been doing a little bit each day. Okay, but certainly over the weekend, spend some time each day going over your chemistry stuff. Don't wait for Sunday night. Okay, go to bed at a reasonable time on Sunday night and get a good solid 8 hours of sleep. Okay, you cannot overrate the importance of a good night's sleep prior to a test. Okay, what's a really important thing for you to do Monday morning? Yeah, have a good breakfast. Okay, black coffee and cigarettes is not a good breakfast. Okay, all right. Hopefully, no one was thinking that. Okay, I'll fry an egg and smoke a cigarette and have a coffee and I'll be good to go. I hope no one's thinking about that. But okay, having a nutritious breakfast, guys, is important. Okay, it's those dumb things like have all the 4 major food groups. Okay, yeah, those are having your brain well fed. Surprisingly makes a big difference on how you feel while writing a test. Now, for you guys, even more important is that you write this in period 2. Okay? And period 2 is usually when your blood sugar starts to drop a little bit. So is it okay for you to bring a snack? Absolutely. But bring something that is a courteous snack. Okay? A bag of Doritos is neither healthy nor courteous during an exam. Okay? And I gave up chips for Lent. If you eat chips in front of me, it's going to affect your mark. Okay? So yeah, no, it's not. Okay? I'm just kidding. But yeah, okay? Bring something that you can eat quietly. It's not going to disturb anyone. Granola bar, banana, okay, something like that. I don't recommend an orange. Makes your fingers all sticky. Yeah? Okay? Yeah. An apple, I mean, it's a little bit crunchy, but it's not a bad idea. Okay? Something like that. It's quick sugar, right? It gets into your bloodstream and feeds your brain right away, and then you don't get the grouches or whatever you get when your blood sugar drops, okay? So yeah, those are all kind of important things to think about. How much should you study at one time, in one sitting? Yeah, an hour really is kind of the tops you should study, okay? At least in one sitting, and then take a break, okay? Your brain needs time to process, okay? Those people who do the all-nighters where they cram for 6 hours, okay? You know what they remember? They remember the stuff in the first 20 minutes, and they remember the stuff they did in the last 20 minutes, and they forget everything in the middle, right? That's the way your brain works. When you're first putting stuff in your brain, it goes into what we call short-term memory. Okay, short-term memory lasts about 8 minutes. It requires things to be repeated in order for things to go into your long-term memory. But if you're going over a whole whack of stuff, okay, in a big long sitting, you don't have time to repeat very much of it. Okay, and so as a result, you remember the stuff that you did first because you were fresh. You remember the stuff you did last because you have time to repeat it later. Okay, and everything in the middle, you're not likely to remember very well. All right, and then when you get to the exam, you have that sensation of, oh, I don't remember anything. Okay, because you forget all the stuff in the middle. All right. The same thing happens to people who do that cramming like the 5 minutes before the exam. Okay. How many people like to do that? They come in the morning, like, and for the 15 minutes before the exam, they're flipping through pages and trying to do everything. You don't do that. You're better off to just come in here and be relaxed. Okay? Because again, all your brain's going to remember is the first two things you looked at and the last two things you looked at, and it'll forget everything in the middle. Okay? And that will happen to you about 5 minutes to 4 to 5 minutes into the exam. Because you'll stop, and how long do things last in short-term memory? About 8 minutes. Okay? So you start doing that, then you stop. I give you 2 or 3 minutes worth of instructions. You start the test, 2 questions in, I don't remember anything. Okay? And then panic sets in, right? And panic is never good in terms of trying to remember things, okay? Or think clearly. So I'm just trying to help you eliminate things that might cause you to have that sensation. Okay? If you study, regularly throughout the weekend, you're going to be a lot better off than if you try to do it all on Sunday night. Okay? Everybody with me there? Little things to think about. When you take a break from your studying, okay, get away from it. All right, go do something else. All right, whatever makes you happy. Find your happy place. Okay, do something. Go for a run or read a book or whatever. Do something else. Okay, play a video game, whatever it happens to be. Just don't play for 3 hours. Okay, take a small break. But those are kind of the big things, guys. Keep those in mind for Monday. What do you need to bring on Monday? Yes, you must have a calculator, okay? You may not have your phone, okay? I'm going to take that away from you. All right, the other thing, guys, probably a couple of pencils, sharpened, okay, or mechanical, it's fine, okay, and probably a pen. Some of the written responses actually like write out sentences and explain stuff. Sometimes it's nicer to use a pen for that, but you definitely don't want to use a pen if you're balancing equations, writing out products, and you make a mistake and you realize you have to go back and fix it, and it's in pen. All right, so have pencil for part of it, a pen for part of it. That's fine. Okay. Yeah, so calculator, pencils, okay, things like that, certainly important. I'm going to let you use your periodic table with this caveat. Okay, I will come around when I take your phone on Monday morning. I'm going to look at your periodic table as well. If you've written notes to yourself all over it, then you're going to get a fresh, clean one. Okay, so yeah, if you've written a whole bunch of stuff all over your periodic table already, you're probably going to be looking at getting a clean one on Monday morning, right? Like if you've written, here's how you do this, and here's how you do this on your periodic table, you won't be able to use that, right? But I can give you a fresh one if that's the case, and it'll be the same one that you have, just without all your hints all over it. Okay, so I will have a look at it, both sides, okay, and just check it over. If it's okay, you can use it. All right, everybody with me? I'm going to try and save some trees on that one. Okay. All right, let's get going on this. First thing that we covered, okay, structure of the atom. Okay, very first day we talked about the structure of the atom. What are you going to need to be able to do with structure of the atom? One of the things is recognize the models. Okay, one of the multiple choice questions on the practice test that I gave you is like that. It's one of the last multiple choice questions. It's got a picture of an atomic model there, and it asks, whose atomic model is this? I would expect something along those lines on your test on Monday. Probably not the same model, okay? But expect something like that. So be able to recognize whose it is, okay? And that's obviously going to be a multiple choice question. Okay, other things to do with structure of the atom, okay? Has to do with the process that we examined there. Okay, and by the scientific process, I mean, Dalton came up with this idea of the solid sphere, and everyone liked that. Until Thomson came along and he did his experiment where he found that chemical reactions can cause electricity to flow. Right? Well, that means that there has to be a particle that's electrically charged that's part of the atom. And Dalton's solid sphere model didn't include that. So we had to come up with the plum pudding model to explain these findings, and that's why each model was eventually rejected and replaced with something else. Okay, when we have new data, that new data doesn't agree with our model has to be revised. You have to talk a bit about that process. Okay, there's going to be a question kind of like that. Okay, that's an and right there, if you're wondering what that is. And it's supposed to look like that. Yeah. Oh, that's shorthand for experiments. Sorry. Yeah. I do a lot of shorthand. Saves you looking at more of my terrible penmanship. Okay, and another thing you're going to have to do is structure the atom. We had to do this on one of our quizzes. Okay, you need to be able to draw an atom. Okay, now you don't know which atom because I'm going to tell you on the test which atom. Right? So in order to effectively draw that then, you're going to need to know how to figure out the number of protons, the number of electrons, and the number of neutrons in an atom. Okay, and that's something we also went over in class. Okay, so it's something you'll have to review. Okay, so these are actually number symbols. This is not hashtag protons, hashtag electrons. Okay, it's number. Well, someone this morning said, "Why do you have hashtags in front of those?" Like, it's number of protons. See, this is a generational thing. That used to mean number in my day. Hey, I'm not cool enough to even know what those are. So, okay. All right, for number 2. Okay, the second thing we went over. Okay, naming and writing formulas. All right. Oh, sorry. So, sorry, for the properties of stuff here, most of this stuff is going to be multiple choice, but this here part about the scientific process and being able to draw atoms, obviously, you don't draw anything in a multiple choice question. So, those are probably written response items. Okay. Naming and writing formulae. That's everywhere. Okay, that is the most basic fundamental skill you must be able to demonstrate on this unit exam. Because if you can't do that, you can't write reactions, you can't predict products, you can't do mole equation questions. It is crucial that you can name and write the formulae for chemical compounds. All right, so will there be multiple choice questions that say, what's the proper formula for beryllium bromide? Yeah, sure, there could be. There's some on your practice test. Okay, will there be some questions that say, what's the name of NaCl? Yeah, there will be. Okay, there's some of those on your practice test as well. Okay, but more importantly, in the written response, when you're asked to do reactions and do mole equation questions, you also have to be able to do this. Okay, so things to think about. Okay, when we're doing naming and stuff. Are there when are our special rules applying? Polyatomic ions with brackets, okay, when they're needed. All right, Roman numerals on special metals when they're needed. Okay, your prefixes, okay, for your molecular compounds, right, stuff like that. So make sure that we're keeping all of those things in mind, okay, as we're preparing for the test. Okay. Questions on the naming? Right, I mean, really, it's just something you got to be able to do, right? Okay, third thing we went over, properties of compounds. Okay, we spent a day on that, and then we did a lab on that. What were you asked to do in that lab? In the properties of compounds lab, what were you asked to do, Katie? Right, you were asked to identify the compounds based on their what? On their physical properties. Expect that I will ask you to do a similar thing. Okay, I'm pretty sure there's a multiple choice question in your practice test that goes something like that. Okay, it's like you have a red crystalline solid that dissolves easily in water and is highly conductive of electricity and has a pH of 6. This compound is likely to be A, hydrogen chloride, B, disulfur triiodide, C, cobalt 2 nitrate, D, nickel 2 chloride. Okay? And then you'd have to identify the right one, which in this case would have been C, okay? Because it was a red crystalline solid, which would be cobalt, okay, containing compounds. All right, so expect probably that you would be asked to do something like that, as well as, you know, yeah, maybe have some questions. What do all acids have in common? What do all bases have in common? You know, what do all molecular compounds have in common? Things like that. There could be some multiple choice kind of stuff about that. All right, so certainly you need to know your properties of compounds stuff. Okay, then solubility. There's lots of terminology to do with solubility. Okay, precipitate, solute, solvent, all that kind of stuff. there could be multiple choice questions that just ask, you put substance E in substance F and it won't dissolve. Substance E is insoluble. Okay, or something like that, where you just have to know what the terms mean. Um, so that would be certainly multiple choice type stuff. In your reactions lab, what did you have to do with your solubility chart? Right. Okay. It asked you, what were the precipitates in these two reactions? Identify them. All right. You'll be asked to do that again. Okay. That's an easy multiple choice question to build, right? I show you a reaction, and I ask you which, if any, of the products are soluble. Okay, or which, if any, of the products are a precipitate, right? And then, there could be, this compound, both, none, right? I mean, that's a pretty easy multiple choice question to build, so expect probably that you'll be asked to use your solubility chart in that way. Okay, so using your solubility chart, certainly going to be part of that. Okay, so I'm really kind of laying things out for you on this unit exam. I'm not always going to lay it out quite this thick, okay? But I hope you're following my thought process here. I keep asking you, what did I ask you to do with this topic? Okay, that's how you study for a test. What have I been asked about to do with this? I'm going to be asked about it again. Okay, if I've asked it on a quiz or I've asked it on a lab, I'm going to ask it again. Okay, those are the things that you're going to be tested on. So that's always kind of the thought process you want to go through when you're studying. Okay, after solubility, or actually in the same lesson as solubility, we talked about the polar nature of water. Okay, and we talked about what is a polar molecule. Okay, the electrons aren't shared equally. Okay, that makes one end charged positively, one end charged negatively. Okay, things like that. So you need to be able to talk about or explain what a polar molecule is. Okay, and then probably in particular explain why that allows water to do some of the things that it does. Okay, so in the written response for this, okay, written response, be able to explain what a polar molecule means, okay, why H2O behaves the way it does, okay, and that's things like that cohesion, right? We said that was important when plants were drawing water up their stem or up their trunk, okay, that they would bond together like the barrel of monkeys, okay. That adhesion, we said sometimes a droplet of water can stick to the side of a glass, okay, surface tension, any stuff like that, and that's because of these hydrogen bonds. Explain what those are, okay. So you definitely have to look over lesson 8. It's the second part of lesson 8 where we talk about the polar nature of water, because you're going to have to explain that. Okay, and I'm pretty sure one of the written response questions on your practice test says exactly that. Okay, which means basically I always ask that. Right? Then reactions. Expect reactions to be in both parts of the exam. Okay, there could very easily be some multiple choice questions that say, which of the following is a double replacement reaction, or here's a reaction, which type is it, A, B, C, or D, something like that. That's a pretty easy multiple choice question to set up since we went over 5 reaction types. Okay, so certainly be able to identify the types. You got to be able to balance. Okay, that's one of those skills you got to be able to demonstrate to me. Okay, writing and predicting is another skill you're definitely going to be asked to show. All right, so yeah, it's going to be in both sections. If there is one topic in this unit that is weighted more heavily than anything else, in fact, more than some things combined on this unit exam, it is this. Okay, and you can see that right from your practice test that I gave you. All right, if you just go through that and look at how many marks are on that practice test about reactions, it's more than anything else. All right, I mean the first what, 4 things or 5 things in the practice test is balancing. Okay, and then the next question is, here's some reactions, predict and balance. Okay, right there you're looking at probably 16 to 20 marks out of 84. Okay, so it's a big section. Okay, so make sure you go over how all that stuff works. Okay, everybody clear on that? There's not much more to say about reactions. Reactions are the most important thing we talked about. Hey, mole equation. Hey, not much to say about that either. You're going to be asked to solve mole equation problems, and I'll tell you right now, we went over how many kinds? 4. How many are on the test? 4. 1 of each kind. I know, I changed my mind. Okay? I just made them easier. Okay? So there's 1 of each kind. All right? I didn't make 3 of the hardest kind. Okay? That would just be cruel. Okay? So, so I made 1 of each kind. All right? Now, here's the thing. I know some of you, when you were going over the mole equation worksheet, the wording on that is weird. And that kind of made some of those questions difficult. I'll tell you right now, the questions on your unit exam are exactly like the examples we went over in class. They're exactly like the ones that were on your quiz yesterday. Okay? Everybody with me there? Exactly like those. So should you watch the podcast of all the, what now? So we did 19 example mole calculations in class this week. And the ones on your test are exactly like those ones. Okay? Yeah. All right, so make sure you look over those. All right, that's it. Okay? That's the stuff that's on the test. Okay? That's it. Now, here's how I gauge the difficulty of a test. All right? I write the test, and then I make up the key. In making up the key, I essentially do the test like you would. All right? Now, if it takes me 1/3 of the time it would take you to write it, the test is on the more difficult side. If it takes 1/4 of the time it would take you to write it, that is a class period, it's on the easier side. You have 82 minutes to write this test, and it took me 18 minutes to do the key, which is less than 1/4 of the time you have to write it. Okay? But here's the thing, guys. I don't want you to take it lightly. Okay? If you don't study for this test, or you take it lightly and like just do a little, like 5 or 10 minutes worth, you're going to get owned. Okay? Because you have to be able to demonstrate skills. If you prepare properly for this test, you will be rewarded. All right? Because you will know exactly how to do everything on it. There is nothing on this test we have not covered many times in class. Okay? There's only one question on this test that requires you to really synthesize something from your own mind. All right? It's on stuff that we've done in this class, okay, and that we've talked about a bunch of times, but it's a real-world application problem. All right? And it's going to make you tie in ideas from 3 things: solubility, reactions, and a little bit to do with the polar nature of water. Okay? Mostly to do with reactions and solubility. It's going to make you tie those ideas. It's going to give you, here's a real-world situation or problem, and you need to solve it using what you know about solubility and reactions. Okay? And then a little bit about water, but mostly solubility and reactions. All right? That's about the only one. Like if you were to just read that question, you'd say, Coderre never taught me that. Okay? I taught you what you need to know to do that question. There's always going to be a question like that on every test where I want to see how well did you actually process what I taught you, as opposed to how well did you memorize what I taught you. Okay? So there's going to be one question like that. There's 33 multiple choice questions. Okay? So that's 33 marks. There are 6 written response items, but many of those have a A, B, C. Okay? So they're, like when you're doing reactions, there's an A, B, C, and D. When you do the mole equations, there's an A, B, C, and a D. Okay? There's 51 marks in the written. Which part should you do first? Do the written first, for a couple of reasons. First off, there's more marks there. Okay? Secondly, I don't think time should be a factor. Okay, I really don't think time is going to be a factor. Everyone should finish this test as long as you don't dawdle. Okay, but should you get pressed for time, it's way better when the time runs out to have 5 multiple choice questions left than it is to have one 5-mark written response item left. Because what can you do on the multiple choice? You can just guess, right? You can't guess on something that says, apply your knowledge to this situation and write a detailed explanation of how you would solve this problem. That's hard to guess on when you don't have any time, okay? It's way easier to go C, 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 okay, for the last, 5, all right? I don't think anyone's going to run into that situation, but just in case, okay, do the written response first. It's always best to do that way, all right? I would also suggest that when you get the test, the first thing you should do is just read it quickly. Right? Lots of times when you're reading one question, it gives you a hint, you remember it, and as you read something else, you're like, oh, that question talked about that too, and it kind of told me the answer to this. That happens once in a while. When we make up tests, we forget stuff like that. Okay, so just be aware that that sometimes happens too. Yeah, I think that's it. Okay, that's what you're going to need to know. On the front page of your unit exam, okay, is this picture. There is a 1-mark bonus question at the end of the written response that has to do with this really bad chemistry joke. Okay? 2 men walk into a bar. The first orders some H2O. The second one says, sounds good, I'll have some H2O too. The second man died. Okay? You can think about that if you have some time while you're studying, figure out why that's funny. Not funny, haha, funny, sad, because it's a chemistry joke, and that's the only kind of chemistry joke there is bad ones. Okay? But yeah. All right, and also, guys, on the first page of your chemistry exam, the mole equation is here, and I even told you what each thing is. Okay? And Avogadro's number is on here as well. Right? So you don't have to memorize those things. You don't have to write them on your periodic table. Okay? They're all there. All right? Okay. Questions from you guys? Anything you wanted to ask about? Okay, go over? Anything like that? Okay. Good. Balancing? Okay. All right. So let's say we have a reaction like this. Let's say we have whoops, that should be a capital C. Okay. When we're balancing chemical reactions, okay, other than combustion reactions, we start with what? Biggest number, okay? Start with the biggest number. Right now, it looks to me like ammonium, okay, NH4 is present in the highest number. How many ammoniums are there over here? 2, okay? How many ammoniums are over here? 1. Okay, really think about that because a lot of times people make the mistake of thinking there's 4. All right, there's only 1 ammonium here. All right, so I need to put a 2 in front of that. Now, generally the way I've taught you to do this is to leapfrog, right? To go back and forth, balancing things as you go, right? So right now, putting this 2 here made my ammonium work, but it also gave me 2 chlorine. So I got to go back over here and make my chlorine work. So what needs to go here? A 2. Okay, when I do that, okay, that gives me 2 sodium. And there's 2 sodium over here, so that worked out pretty well. There's also 1 sulfur and 1 sulfur, so now I'm balanced. It doesn't really matter which side you start on, just pick the biggest number and go. Okay. Remember that for combustion reactions, we have special balancing rules. We balance in what order? Right. C, H, O, alphabetical order. Okay, start with carbon, go to hydrogen, go to oxygen last. Okay, and if there's an even number of carbons, you start with a 2. Okay, those are just the special balancing rules that only apply to combustion reactions. Okay, what else? Predicting? Yep. Okay, so if I have, let's say, this reaction here. Okay, when I'm predicting a chemical reaction, first I write the reactants. This would probably have been given to me this way. It probably would have been written like this. Phosphorus reacts with sodium, okay? On the unit exam, when I ask you to predict, it's going to be written in words, all right? So your first step is write the reactants. Then I look at the reactants and I have to match up in my mind this pattern to a reaction that we talked about. We went over 5 types, okay? Only one kind of reaction starts out with 2 elements. What is it? Synthesis. In a synthesis reaction, these 2 elements are going to they're going to combine. So I have to remember that in a synthesis reaction, what's going to happen? So they're going to combine to make an ionic compound. Okay, metal first, non-metal second. If they were both non-metals, well, it would be nearly impossible to predict actually, so I won't do that. Okay, now I've made an ionic compound, so what do I need to check? I need to check my swap and drop. All right, so this is going to be Na3P. All right, what's my last step? Balance the reaction. Okay, I start with what's present in the highest number. Okay, in this case, that's phosphorus. I've got 4 over here and only 1 over here. So what do I need to put here? Okay, when I do that, how many sodium does it give me? 12. All right, and we're good from there. So the steps are, okay, you look at the reaction, okay, you write the reactants, identify the type, okay, put the products together, check for ionics, check for special elements, balance the reaction. Okay? Did you get the flow chart for that? Okay. All right. What else? Yep. Okay, so let's have a look at okay, so I would probably ask, here, predict this first, okay? So it's a double replacement reaction because both of the reactants are what kind of compounds? They're both ionic, right? They're both ionic, so we're going to swap the metals, okay, to have our products. So that means lead will end up with chlorine, okay, and lithium will end up with nitrate. Okay, since they're both ionic, what do I need to do with them? I need to drop and swap. Okay, over here, lead was a 2 plus. Okay, because nitrate's a -1, so this had to be a +2. Okay, so over here, it's a +2. This is a -1, so we're going to get PbCl2. Right? Lithium's a +1. Nitrate's a -1, so that one's okay. Right? We can balance the reaction, although if this was a solubility question, we wouldn't have to, but we'll just do it for the sake of doing it. Okay, there's 2 chlorines over here. Now there's 2 chlorines over here, but that gives me 2 lithium. So you got to put 2 lithium over here, and when I do that, it makes my nitrates balance. Okay. Now, if I was asked which of the products, if any, are soluble, then I got to go to my solubility chart. Okay. So here's my solubility chart. Okay, so I would look up first, I would look up the lithium with nitrate. So here's nitrate. Okay, soluble with most things, but not with, well, lithium's definitely not down there. Okay, so the lithium nitrate is soluble. All right, so I know at least one of them is. Okay, now I've got to check the lead 2 chloride, which was my other one. So chlorine is here, soluble with most, but lead is down here. So that would be a precipitate. So only one of our products, lithium nitrate, is soluble. So if it's a multiple choice question, you'd say lithium nitrate. Yeah? Does that make sense? Okay, so it's just asking you. Same thing that question number 2 in your reaction lab was asking. Okay. Anything else? Okay, well, you still got a few minutes. You can work on your practice test there. Did I show you guys that I updated the key? Okay, so the key for the unit exam review, I was able to get more of it done. Okay, it isn't complete, but all the multiple choice now have the answers keyed, and the first written response item on the practice exam has the answer keyed. So if you go to key for chemistry exam review on my website there in the Science 10 stuff chemistry folder, okay, so right, we've already clicked Science 10 stuff, so that's where we are, right? Okay, and then I opened up the chem folder. Okay, so key for chemistry exam review, if you open that up. Okay, so this is the review sheet, the front page of that package I gave you. Okay, the answers are in there even for the naming. Okay, for the reactions, okay, it's in my chicken scratch, but it's there. Okay, for the mole equation, the answers are in there. And then for these ones here, because they're explained paragraph type answers, there's no answer for those. But in the written response, okay, I've highlighted in green the correct answer, sorry, for the multiple choice. And then for the written, all I got done was the balancing question. I didn't get any of these ones done. So, okay, but at least a little bit more of it is done. You can check your answer with the multiple choice and stuff. All right, so that's updated as well. Okay, any other questions there? What do you need to bring again? Calculator, pencils, and pen. Okay, make sure you have all that stuff. And probably, guys, a snack. And if you want something to drink while you're in here, okay, bottle of water or something like that. Just make sure it's resealable. Okay, so that you can not make a mess or spill it all over your test. That would also be bad. Okay. All right.